Someone said. Who said it? Is it possible it was the object talking? In some miracle of silent speech, the group all looked at each other individually and came to the unanimous conclusion that it was time to let go. The tiny sleigh must be free to go now that it had survived the war and the tyranny that came with it. The war was over, so the box was free to return to its rightful place. The group had served its purpose by providing protection for the sleigh until its time to go had come. That time having arrived, the boys quickly said their goodbyes. None of them tried to use their newly attained influence to gain favor from the big guy once the sleigh was returned. Leon, said Jay, I would say ask the box, but the box is gone, so I guess you can say, Sleigh, what do we do next? Leon pondered Jay's statement for a bit, and although he didn't know what a conundrum was, the issue before Leon was in fact a conundrum, and it pained him mentally to have to consider it. But consider it he did. Leon moved a little closer to the object and said something the others could not hear or just could not understand. To the surprise of all those present, Leon was speaking to the sleigh in German. Until moments ago, he was unaware that he could read German, let alone speak it. The others thought they heard him repeat what was printed on the label when they first saw and found the box. In the big block letters, it had said, Offen Sie bis Weihnachten 1941 nicht. And as established earlier in this story, the German words translated to do not open until Christmas 1941. Amazingly, though, Leon went beyond what was on the label. He continued to converse with the object in its apparent native language. Leon said, Hot Abend ist Heiligabend, der Weihnachtmann kommt. In English, that means, tonight is Christmas Eve, and Santa Claus is coming. The object continued to converse with Leon, to which Leon responded by nodding or grunting in a positive manner to whatever was coming from the object. Leon finally stepped back as if some sort of spell had just been removed for him. He shuddered visibly and shook his head rapidly from side to side. He looked like an old hound dog flopping his ears and lips after a long snooze face down in the dirt. He turned toward the group. Leon spoke briefly and concisely, which was far removed from his usual limited command of oratory. First off, the sleigh must go immediately. Secondly, the sleigh expresses its fondness of those who retrieved it from the wet, muddy bog that might eventually had consumed it. The sleigh also wants to thank all those who worked to keep it safe, secure, and secreted from public scrutiny. Lastly, the sleigh asks that you turn away from it and assume the duck and cover position before it exits. The sleigh says, while this may be a new term for you now, it will come up again in later years during what will become known as the Atomic Age. Dutifully, they all complied. Facing away from the sleigh, they all knelt to their knees, bent over, and placed their faces in their hands on the ground. Determined not to look, they listened intently to the great rumblings and sounds of huge amounts of energy being released. For fear of blindness, they squeezed their eyes as tightly closed as possible. The light became brighter and brighter and brighter in the full darkness of Christmas Eve. Finally, the light began to decrease as the sleigh was assumed to be well on its way to the North Pole. They were suddenly all kind of sleepy. Without protest, they each went their own way towards home. That is where they would find warmth and love of family, which sounded like the right place to be this particular night. The brothers, Jay, Wes, and Wayne, returned to the same window by which they had exited. In a whisper, Jay spoke to Richard and Lyndon through the broken window pane. "Hey, wake up, Lyndon. Open the window so we can sneak back in. Don't wake Daddy up. He might not think kindly to our being gone. Wake up, Lyndon. Can't you hear me? Wake up." I rubbed my eyes, trying to wake up, when I heard the voice. But I wasn't sure where it was coming from. I raised up and looked around and immediately recognized that I wasn't even at home. I was in church. It was a Christmas Eve service. I was vaguely aware that there was a lot of talk about sleigh bells and sleighs and Santa Claus before I drifted off to sleep. Mama rubbed my head and said, "Are you awake now, Lyndon?" I responded with, "Yes, Mama, I'm awake. Boy, you'll never believe the dream I just had." I didn't have time to tell the whole dream just then, beyond the fact that I dreamed about a tiny sleigh and my older brothers had a part in setting it free. I allowed as how the details would come later. Church was over, and that meant one thing. With an air of urgency, the pool boys couldn't be restrained any longer. They knew that Daddy had left the church service early. They were sure that meant there would be presents under the tree when they got home. As soon as the final prayer was finished, they would be out the door, just seconds now till go time. The preacher asked for a volunteer to pray. Halford Hallowell raised his hand. "Oh, no," said Jay. "He always says the longest prayers ever uttered in the First Baptist Church in Wilton, Arkansas." Sure enough, Mr. Hallowell was off and running. With heads bowed and eyes closed, the boys reverently, or at least quietly, inched their way toward the big double doors at the rear of the church. As soon as they heard amen, they would be out the door and heading home. On and on the prayer continued. They were going nuts as Mr. Hallowell paused and drew a big breath and started off again. "No," said Wes. "He's off and running again." Finally, Mr. Hallowell almost shouted, "Amen." With that, the boys executed a not-so-elegant exit from the joyous Christmas proceedings. Bursting out the exit doors of the church, Jay, Wes, and Wayne became a mass of flailing knees and elbows not unlike a sadly wound ball of barbed wire and calf rope. Today, toward home they marched, looking at the meager decorations of the individuals' homes only slightly as they passed. They reached mill store windows. From there, home was almost visible across the railroad tracks. Jay was first to see it. Wes and Wayne had been following single file, and they stacked up behind Jay. They looked in the store window and became transfixed. There, amid the display, placed on a red velvet blanket, was a tiny, shiny, perfectly formed little bitty sleigh. "Was that there when we went to church?" asked Jay. "I didn't see it." Wayne nodded in agreement. As they started to walk on by, Jay said, Look, there's a little sign down there next to it. What does it say?" "Good grief," Wes said. "It says Made in Germany."